Long ago, nestled between rolling green hills and the sleeping backs of old forests, there lay a small town called Windmere. It was a tidy place, with tidy chimneys, tidy hedgerows, and the tidiest clocks in all the land. In Windmere, time ruled everything. The clocks rang to wake the farmers. The bells chimed to open the shops. And the great tower in the center of town ticked so loudly that even the clouds seemed to pass by on schedule. Children were taught the hours before they could read. People ate precisely at noon. And if you sneezed between the quarter chimes, someone would hand you a napkin exactly 3 seconds later. But with all this order, something quiet had gone missing. Something soft and forgotten. Sleep. No one slept well in Windmere anymore. Not truly. They laid down on time, closed their eyes on time, but their dreams were hurried, shallow, and restless. Because the clocks were always ticking, even the moon looked tired. At the edge of Windmere, just beyond where the cobbled streets met the meadow path, stood a crooked house with a bent chimney and moss on the roof. There lived an old woman named Nella. She was the clockmaker. No one remembered when she had moved in. She had always just been there, mending watches, oiling gears, building clocks that never rushed. Her shop was filled with soft ticking, warm ticking, the kind of ticking that felt like breathing. But lately, Nella had begun to frown. She watched the people of Windmere walking faster, eating faster, dreaming less. Even the stars above seemed impatient. One day, as the sun blinked over the hills, she sat with her tea and sighed. "They've forgotten how to rest," she whispered. "Even time needs to pause." That night, she dusted off an old blueprint, drawn in moon ink, folded 12 times. At the top, in curling letters, it read, "The clock that dreams." She began to work, not with haste, but with intention. She wound springs made from river reeds, gears carved from stardust wood, a pendulum weighted with a stone that had once rested inside a wishing well. This clock would not mark time. It would mellow it, and at its heart, tucked inside the chamber where the chimes would go, she placed something very old, a single sliver of night silence, wrapped in velvet, still as sleep. When she was finished, she carried it into the square, set it beneath the great ticking tower, and whispered, "Let this one ring softly." Then she turned the key and waited. NG feathers. Instead of sharp chimes, it gave off tones, deep, round notes like the yawn of a cello or the sigh of a mother brushing her child's hair. Some said the sound made their eyes grow heavier. Others claimed it brought forgotten memories to mind, of fishing with grandparents, of falling asleep on warm summer hay, of lullabies with no words. At sunset, Nella stood in the square, watching the people slow, not stop, just soften. A merchant sat down and stared at the sky for no reason at all. A teacher let the children nap on their desks instead of drilling timetables. A pair of farmers ate their bread in silence and felt fuller than usual. The dreaming clock had no numbers, just symbols. A crescent moon at 1, a curled cat at 5, a gently closed eye at midnight. It told no one when to rush, only when to rest. Some villagers protested at first. "How will I keep schedule? My tea oversteeped." The bakery closed before the second bell. But by the end of the week, even they admitted they had slept better. Windmere changed. Little by little, the bells still rang, but no longer like orders. They rang like invitations. And once a day, at dusk, the dreaming clock played a tune no one could name. It didn't stay in your head, but it stayed in your heart. And when it ended, people sighed, not in sadness, but in peace. It had been nearly a month since Nella placed the dreaming clock beneath the tower, and Windmere, the once clock-struck village of bustle and bells, was now calm The bakery no longer opened at the same hour each day. The weaver down the lane hummed new songs as she worked, often pausing mid-stitch just to look at the sky. Children no longer feared being late, because lateness had no teeth anymore. People didn't just sleep longer. They dreamed. Rich, curious dreams. Dreams they remembered. Dreams they spoke of in the mornings, like gifts they'd unwrapped overnight. And one morning, just as the dew was lifting from the hedges, a child knocked on the bent door of Nella's shop. She was small, with wild hair like thistledown and freckles like breadcrumbs. Her name was Maisie. "Excuse me," Maisie said in a whispery voice. "Are you the clock lady?" Nella smiled. "I suppose I am." Maisie stepped inside. She didn't look at the clocks. She looked up, as if trying to listen to something just above her head. "I think I heard your clock in my sleep," she said, very seriously. Nella raised one eyebrow. "Oh?" Maisie nodded. It made a sound like falling starlight. I followed it, and then I saw a door. It was small, like a mouse's door, but glowing. Nella leaned closer. Maisie's voice dropped to a whisper. The door said, "Come in when you are ready to rest properly." But I didn't open it. I was afraid. Nella did not laugh. She simply nodded, then turned and picked up a tiny bell from her work table. It was no bigger than a plum seed. Its tone could not be heard by waking ears. She handed it to Maisie. "This," Nella said, "is a dream key. Not to open the door, but to remind you that it's yours." Maisie stared at it like it was made of moonlight. Then, still quiet, she slipped it into her pocket and tiptoed out. That night, in her sleep, Maisie heard the clock again. A soft hum like a lullaby sung from behind the stars. She found the door, and this time she went through. The next morning, Maisie woke smiling. She told no one what she saw, not even Nella. But from that day forward, she never feared sleeping again, and she gave up her habit of hurrying entirely. Word spread among the children, and quietly, kindly, more began to dream of the clock's door, each in their own way. Some opened it, sat beside it. One child painted it. All felt better when they woke. The dreaming clock never asked for thanks. It simply ticked on, slow, steady, full of peace. One cloudy morning, as the steam curled from her teacup, Nella found a letter tucked into her shop's wooden windowsill. It was sealed with a blue wax crescent and tied with thread. She untied it slowly, as she did everything, and read aloud. "To the clockmaker of Windmere, we are from the town of Grindlethorpe, east of the Sleeping Hills. We hear your clock has changed your people. We write to ask, can you build one for us? Our town has not slept in years. Our children forget dreams. Our stars seem dim. We work day and night, and though we prosper, we are tired in our bones. Please help. The Council of Grindlethorpe." Nella folded the letter gently, stared at her cooling tea, and nodded to no one in particular. "Yes," she said, "it is time again." She didn't pack much. Just a trunk of tiny gears, a velvet bag of moon sand, and a kettle she liked. Maisie gave her a hug and a pouch of moss bread for the road. And so, on the 7th morning of the week, Nella set off. Grindlethorpe was very different from Windmere. Taller buildings, faster carts, eyes that blinked but did not see, and clocks, dozens of them, but none gentle. They ticked harshly. They clicked and snapped, and none of them stopped, not even at midnight. Nella was welcomed with hope and skepticism. "We've tried lullabies and tonics," said one official. "And blackout curtains," said another. "But nothing works. Sleep slips through us." Nella looked at the people. They didn't look cruel, just exhausted, as if they'd been awake for generations. She nodded once, then asked softly, "Where is your quietest square?" They led her to a sunken courtyard filled with overgrown ivy. She unpacked her tools and began to build. This dreaming clock was different than Windmere's, taller, rounder, with softer edges. Its gears were made from driftwood, and its face was carved with phases of the moon. But at its heart, Nella placed a hollow sphere wrapped in silver thread. Inside it was a single yawn, collected, she said, from a child who had just heard their favorite bedtime story. She lit a candle beside the finished clock, stepped back, and said only, "Do not wind it until you are ready to listen." Then she left. That night, no one wound the clock, but the moon glowed brighter than it had in years. And for the first time in a generation, Grindlethorpe slept. Not all at once, but in turns, like stars blinking out, one by one. Nella returned to Windmere as the snow began to melt. The village welcomed her softly, not with noise or fanfare, but with the calm smiles of people who knew she had brought back something precious. The dreaming clock in the square still ticked, slow and steady, its music now part of the village's quiet breath. But Maisie, the little girl who once heard the clock in her sleep, was growing up, and she had her own secret. In the corner of Nella's workshop, hidden beneath a cloth embroidered with stars, Maisie had built a tiny clock, no bigger than a walnut. Its hands moved not with numbers, but with feelings. It didn't ring bells. It whispered kindness. It hummed courage. It ticked softly, like a heartbeat. Maisie called it the Keeper, and she carried it with her wherever she went. One night, as a storm rattled the rooftops and winds howled through the hedgerows, Maisie held the Keeper close. She whispered, "For those who can't find rest, may this clock find them." And far away, in towns where sleep had fled, in homes where dreams had been forgotten, the gentle tick of the Keeper began to spread. It was not a magic that could be seen, but one that could be felt, a soft invitation to pause, to breathe, to remember that even time needs to rest. And so, the story of Windmere and its dreaming clock became a quiet legend, passed from ear to ear, from heart to heart, a lullaby of time and stillness. For every clock that ticks loudly, there is a clock that dreams quietly, waiting for someone to listen. The End, a tale of time, rest, and the gentle power of slowing down, for all who need a soft place to dream. Absolutely. Here's the beginning of a new long medieval bedtime story, filled with mystery, quiet courage, and the gentle magic of a forgotten forest. In the quiet kingdom of Eldermore, where ancient trees whispered secrets older than the stones, there lived a girl named Elara. Her village was small, a cluster of thatched roofs and smoke curling softly into the sky, a place where everyone knew each other's stories and most days passed like soft breaths. But Elara's story was different. She was born on a night when the stars hid behind thick clouds, when the moon refused to rise, and when the old forest beyond the village grew unnaturally dark. As a child, Elara loved to wander the edges of that forest. She felt its pull, a silent song that tugged at her heart. Her mother warned her, "The forest holds memories, child. Not all are kind." One evening, as twilight stretched its fingers across the sky, Elara found something unusual near the edge of the trees. A lantern, but not like any lantern she had seen. It glowed softly, a warm amber light, but it had no flame, no smoke, just a gentle, steady glow. Elara reached out and touched the lantern's handle. It was cool, like riverstone, but pulsed with a quiet warmth. When she lifted it, the forest around her seemed to breathe. The shadows softened. The path ahead shimmered faintly. That night, Elara took the lantern home. She hid it beneath her bed, and as she lay awake, she felt something stirring inside her. A courage, a hope, a light. But the next morning, the village awoke to find the forest darkened again, deeper, darker, and whispers began to spread. Stories of shadows moving between the trees, of animals fleeing the ancient woods, and of a forgotten curse returning. Elara knew her lantern was not ordinary. She felt it was connected to the forest's secret, and she decided she must understand its light. Before the darkness swallowed Eldermoor entirely, Elara rose before dawn, the lantern's amber light flickering softly beside her. The village still slept beneath a blanket of mist and silence, but she could not wait. The forest was calling. She wrapped a woolen cloak around her shoulders and stepped quietly through the sleeping streets. The lantern pulsed warmly in her hand, a steady heartbeat guiding her steps. At the forest's edge, the trees stood like ancient sentinels, their branches tangled high above, weaving a canopy that swallowed the pale morning light. Elara took a deep breath, then stepped beneath the first arching bough. The air inside was cooler, thicker, as if the forest held its breath. The lantern's glow brightened, just enough to light her path. Soft shadows danced like whispers among the leaves. Birdsong was absent, but Elara heard other sounds. The rustle of hidden wings, the faint murmur of unseen water, and beneath it all, a pulse, a rhythm. She followed the light deeper, past roots twisted like ancient fingers, past stones worn smooth by time. After what felt like hours, she reached a small clearing. In its center stood a tree unlike any she had seen before. Its trunk was wide and silvered with age. Its leaves shimmered like glass, and nestled among its roots was a pool, still and shining like liquid night. Elara knelt by the pool, the lantern's glow reflected in the water surface. She saw not her own face, but a soft swirl of colors. Memories, dreams, fragments of stories long forgotten. Suddenly, the forest breathed out. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, and a voice, barely more than a whisper, brushed her ear. Light the lantern within to awaken the past and save the future. Elara's heart quickened. She didn't know what the voice meant, but she felt the truth in it. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a flint. Striking it carefully, she sparked a flame beneath the lantern's glass. The amber light flared, brighter, warmer, spilling like honey over the clearing. The pool rippled. The silvered tree shimmered, and from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. From the twilight shadows stepped a figure cloaked in silver leaves, shimmering softly like moonlight caught in the wind. Tall and slender, with eyes that held the deep calm of ancient forests, the guardian moved with a grace as old as the woods themselves. Elara. The voice was smooth as flowing water, yet strong enough to fill the clearing. You carry the lantern of Eldermoor, a light forgotten by time, but not by the forest. Elara's fingers tightened around the warm lantern. How do you know my name? She whispered. The guardian smiled gently. I know the stories whispered by the trees. The songs sung by the stars? You were born under the moonless night, marked to mend the shadow that creeps upon these woods. Elara swallowed hard. The village fears the darkness is a curse. She glanced at the silver tree, its leaves shimmering like a secret. Is it true? The guardian nodded. Long ago, a sorrow was cast here, a shadow born from loss and silence. It feeds on fear and forgetfulness. Only the lantern's light can soothe it. But how? Elara asked. The lantern's glow pulsed warmly in her hands. You must journey to the Heartwood, the guardian said, stepping aside to reveal a hidden path winding deeper into the forest. There, beneath the oldest roots, lies the Well of Echoes. You must light the lantern as flame within the well, and listen to the forest as true voice. Elara nodded, determination stirring inside her. I will do it. The guardian placed a silver leaf upon her shoulder, a token of protection and guidance. Take this, they said softly, and remember, light is strongest when shared. As Elara turned to follow the path, the guardian's voice lingered like a breeze. Fear not the shadows, for they are part of the story, but never the whole. Alara stepped onto the winding path the guardian had shown her. The trees grew taller here. Their branches knotted into shapes that seemed almost alive, twisting like fingers guarding ancient secrets. The silver leaf on her shoulder shimmered softly, guiding her steps. As she walked, the forest grew darker, not with sunlight fading, but with something heavier, a quiet weight. She came to a fork in the path. One way led deeper into shadow, the other to a river sparkling faintly beneath the moonlight. Ilara paused. The lantern's glow warmed her palm. She remembered the guardian's words. Light is strongest when shared. She chose the shadowed path. Soon, she heard a faint sobbing, soft, like the rustling of dry leaves. Ilara followed the sound and found a small figure curled beneath a twisted tree. A child, eyes wide and shimmering with tears. "Why do you cry?" Ilara asked gently. The child looked up. "I'm lost," they whispered. "Lost and afraid of the dark." Ilara knelt beside them. She held out the lantern. "Then come with me. Together, we can find the way." The child nodded and took her hand. As they walked, the lantern's light grew stronger. Shadows receded. The path unfolded before them like a ribbon of silver. At last, they reached a clearing. In its center stood the Well of Echoes, old as time, deep as silence. Ilara knelt and dipped the lantern's flame into the well. The water shimmered. Images rose, memories of the forest's past, songs of joy and sorrow, whispers of those who had loved these woods. The child smiled, no longer afraid. Ilara felt her own heart lighten. The lantern glowed brighter than ever. The shadows lifted. The forest breathed free. Ilara walked back through the forest, the lantern's glow steady and warm. The trees seemed to bow in silent thanks, their leaves shimmering softly in the returning light. The village of Eldermoor came into view, nestled beneath the hills like a sleepy jewel. No longer did the forest cast long, fearful shadows over the homes. Instead, a gentle calm hung in the air. As Ilara stepped into the village square, the people gathered quietly. They sensed something had changed. Something old and tender had returned. She held up the lantern high. Its light spread softly over the crowd, not harsh or blinding, but like the first touch of dawn. A hush fell, and then, from the deepest hearts of Eldermoor, a song rose, simple, sweet, like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Ilara smiled, feeling the warmth ripple through her. The curse was lifted. The forest was free, and so were they all. From that day forward, the lantern of Eldermoor stood at the village's edge, a symbol of hope, courage, and the quiet strength that lives in every heart, willing to carry light through the darkest woods. And Ilara? She became the guardian of that light, a keeper of stories, shadows, and the promise that no darkness is endless. The end, a soft tale of courage, light, and the gentle power of hope, perfect for drifting into peaceful dreams. Absolutely. Here's the beginning of a new long medieval bedtime story, full of mystery, gentle magic, and the quiet strength of a young squire discovering his true path. In a peaceful valley, tucked between rolling hills and whispering woods, lay the village of Brindlebrook. Its cobblestone streets were lined with humble cottages, smoke curling lazily from thatched roofs. Here, the days passed slowly, filled with the simple rhythm of farmhands, blacksmiths, and wandering minstrels. Among the villagers lived a young boy named Cedric. He was not yet a knight, but a squire, learning the ways of sword and shield under the watchful eye of Sir Rowan, the village's noble protector. Cedric was quiet and curious. He dreamed not just of battles and glory, but of secrets hidden beneath the ordinary, the stories that whispered in the wind, the legends tangled in the roots of the ancient forest nearby. One misty morning, As dawn painted the sky with soft pinks and golds, Cedric wandered beyond the village's edge. His thoughts were heavy with lessons yet learned and a longing he could not name. Near the twisted oak known as the Whispering Tree, he stumbled upon something unexpected. Half buried beneath moss and earth lay a sword, but this was no ordinary blade. Its hilt shimmered with strange runes. Its steel seemed to hum softly, as if alive. Cedric reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the sword, a gentle warmth spread through his hand. The air around him stilled. A whisper tickled his ear. The time has come. Startled, Cedric looked around. The forest was silent, but the sword's glow pulsed steadily in his grasp. He knew, without knowing how, that this sword held a secret, one tied to his own destiny and the fate of Brindlebrook itself. Cedric carried the glowing sword carefully back to Brindlebrook. The village was just waking. Rooster crowing, shopkeepers opening shutters, and children chasing after stray chickens. He found Sir Rowan sharpening his blade outside the forge. The knight looked up, his eyes narrowing as Cedric approached. "Where have you been, boy?" Sir Rowan asked, voice firm but not unkind. Cedric held out the sword. "I found this near the Whispering Tree," he said softly. It feels alive." Sir Rowan took the sword, examining the runes etched along its hilt. A shadow passed across his face. "This is no ordinary blade," he murmured. "Legends speak of a sword called Heartfire, forged by the ancient smiths of Eldara, imbued with magic to protect the innocent and reveal truth." Cedric's eyes widened. "Do you think this is it?" Sir Rowan nodded slowly. "But such a weapon chooses its bearer. If the sword has called to you, Cedric, then your path may be greater than you imagined." He placed a firm hand on Cedric's shoulder. "Tomorrow, we journey to the old archives. There, we will seek the history of Heartfire and the task it demands." That night, Cedric lay awake, the sword resting beside his bed. The runes shimmered faintly in the moonlight. His heart beat with hope and a touch of fear. The morning sun filtered softly through the stained glass of Eldara's ancient archives. Cedric and Sir Rowan stepped carefully among towering shelves filled with dusty tomes and scrolls, the echoes of centuries past. Sir Rowan guided Cedric to a worn leather-bound book etched with the emblem of a blazing heart. "This," he said reverently, "is the Chronicle of Eldara. Within its pages lies the story of Heartfire and the burden it bears." Cedric opened the book, eyes wide. He read aloud. "Heartfire was forged in a time when darkness spread across the land, a sword of pure light to stand against the Shadow King. Its bearer was destined to bring balance, to protect the innocent and face the creeping darkness. But the sword vanished long ago, lost to legend, until now." Suddenly, a chill swept through the room. The torches flickered. A whisper echoed softly. "The shadow returns?" Sir Rowan's hand went to the hilt of his sword. "Someone knows the sword has awakened," he said grimly. "We must be vigilant, Cedric. Your journey has only just begun." The days that followed in Brindlebrook were heavy with unease. Whispers of shadowy figures lurking at the forest's edge spread like wildfire. Farmers reported strange lights flickering among the trees at night, and the village dogs howled without cause. Sir Rowan trained Cedric harder than ever. Steel clanged against steel as the young squire learned not only the sword's edge, but the strength of his heart. One evening, as twilight bled into night, a sudden cry pierced the village. A group of villagers rushed to the woods. There, in a small clearing, flickering shadows danced and twisted. Cedric gripped Heartfire tightly. Its runes pulsed, glowing with fierce warmth. He stepped forward, voice steady. "Leave this place. There is no welcome for darkness here." From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in midnight, eyes glowing faintly red. A cold smile curved their lips. "So, the sword has chosen its bearer," the figure said. voice like the hiss of dry leaves. "Come then, boy. Let us see if your heart is as bright as the blade you hold." Steel met shadow. Light clashed with darkness. And the battle for Brindlebrook's soul began. The clearing was alive with tension. The shadowy figure moved like smoke, swift and elusive. Cedric held Heartfire steady, feeling the warmth of its magic pulse through his veins. "You carry more than a sword, young squire," the shadow hissed. "You carry hope. But hope alone will not save you." Cedric's voice was steady, filled with a strength he hadn't known he possessed. "Then I will carry more. Courage, faith, and the light of all who believe in the dawn." The battle raged beneath the ancient oaks. Steel clashed with darkness. Sparks flew like fireflies in the night. With every strike, Heartfire's runes glowed brighter. The shadow faltered, its form flickering. At last, with one final shining blow, Cedric sent the darkness retreating into the depths of the forest. The clearing was bathed in soft, golden light. Breathing heavily, Cedric looked up at the stars. He knew this was only the beginning. But Brindlebrook was safe, for now, and the light of Heartfire would never fade as long as brave hearts carried its flame. The end. A tale of courage, hope, and the quiet power of light in the face of shadow. Perfect for a peaceful night's rest. Of course, here's the beginning of a new long medieval bedtime story, full of wonder, gentle magic, and a journey that unfolds beneath starry skies. In the valley of Silver Glen, nestled between towering hills and whispering rivers, lay the village of Starling Hollow. The villagers were simple folk, farmers, bakers, and weavers, known far and wide for their fine cloth. Among them lived a young woman named Myra. She was a weaver unlike any other, for her fingers seemed to dance with the threads of the night itself. Each evening, Myra would climb to the hilltop, carrying her loom beneath the spreading branches of an ancient oak. There, she wove not just cloth, but stories made of silver threads that shimmered like starlight. One night, as the moon hung low and the stars blinked awake, Myra noticed something strange. A single thread of light, brighter than any she had ever woven, floated down from the sky. It twirled around her fingers, warm and alive. Curious and unafraid, Myra reached out and caught the thread. It hummed softly, as if whispering secrets meant only for her. That night, as she wove by the firelight, the thread began to glow, casting dancing lights across the walls. In its glow, Myra saw visions of distant lands, hidden wonders, and a story waiting to be told. She knew her weaving had been touched by magic, and that her gift was about to lead her on a journey beyond Starling Hollow, into a world of stars, shadows, and forgotten secrets. As the moon rose high, casting silver light over Silver Glen, Myra wrapped her cloak tight and followed the glowing thread. It floated before her, winding like a river of light through the darkened woods. The trees whispered softly as she passed, leaves rustling like old songs carried on the breeze. The path was unfamiliar, yet Myra's heart felt steady, as if the thread itself was guiding her. After some time, she came to a clearing bathed in starlight. There, sitting by a small fire, was a figure cloaked in midnight blue. The traveler looked up as Myra approached. His eyes sparkled like distant galaxies. He smiled warmly. "Welcome, weaver of starlight," he said. "I am Elion, keeper of the night's secrets." Myra blinked, surprised. "How do you know me?" Elion's gaze softened. "The thread you hold is part of the sky's own weave. Only those chosen can see it." He gestured to the fire. "Sit, and I will tell you a story of stars, of magic, and of a gift that must be shared." Myra settled beside him, her fingers still holding the glowing thread. The night stretched wide above them, and the journey had only just begun. Elion's eyes gleamed in the firelight as he spoke. "Long ago," he began, "the stars wove a prophecy. that one born of thread and light would hold the power to restore the fading sky. Mira's fingers tightened around the glowing thread. Restore the sky? Yes, Elion said, voice low and steady. For the stars are weakening. A shadow rises from the mountains beyond the valley, swallowing the light and silencing the night's song. He reached into his cloak and produced a small silver needle, ancient and etched with tiny runes. This needle, he explained, is the key to weaving the sky anew. But its magic can only be awakened by one who carries the sky's own thread. Mira looked down at the thread in her hand, now humming with quiet power. Her heart both thrilled and trembled. The journey will be perilous, Elion warned. But together we may light the path and mend the fabric of the stars. Suddenly, a chill breeze swept the clearing. The fire flickered, and from the dark mountains came a faint, eerie glow, a warning that the shadow had begun its march. At first light, Myra and Elion gathered their few belongings. The glowing thread was carefully wrapped around the silver needle, nestled safely in a leather pouch. The villagers of Starling Hollow gathered to see them off, their faces a mix of hope and worry. Mira's mother pressed a hand-woven cloak into her arms. For warmth and courage, she whispered. The path ahead wound through ancient forests and rocky foothills. Birdsong gave way to silence as the trees grew taller and darker. Elion led the way with calm confidence, his eyes ever watchful. Mira felt the weight of the needle's magic against her side, a constant reminder of the task ahead. At night, beneath the vast canopy of stars, Elion shared stories of the sky's creation, of threads woven by celestial weavers and stars born from ancient songs. Mira listened, weaving these tales into her heart. But as they neared the mountains, the air grew colder, heavier. A shadow hung over the land, blotting out the moon's gentle light. One evening, as they made camp beside a quiet stream, a low howl echoed from the darkness. The shadow was near, and their journey was only just beginning. The next morning, the trees changed. They became taller, darker, pines so old their trunks were black with time. Mira and Elion entered the forest with caution, the air thick with silence. It is here, Elion said softly, that the shadow first took root. He placed a protective charm at the forest's edge, a circle of woven silver thread to mark their path home. As they moved deeper beneath the boughs, the light of the thread in Mira's pouch began to dim. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat struggling to continue. Then the whispers began, not from mouths, but from the trees, from the wind, from the dark places between the roots. You are too small, the voices hissed. You are only a weaver. Turn back, Myra's feet faltered. But Elion touched her shoulder. Shadows lie, he said. Your thread glows because your heart does. They pressed on. But when they reached the forest's heart, Mira froze. Before her stood a creature of mist and shadow, tall, faceless, eyes like dying coals. It raised a hand and showed her a torn piece of sky, threadless, gray, hollow. This, it rasped, is what awaits. Nothing. Silence. Give me the needle and rest. Mira trembled, but she stepped forward. No, she whispered. I will weave light where you bring dark. That is my gift. With shaking hands, she held out the needle. The thread flared, golden and pure, and the creature recoiled with a shriek that bent the air. It fled into the trees. The path ahead cleared, and the thread glowed once more. Elion smiled. You faced the first shadow weaver, and your light held. Beyond the black pines, the land rose steeply. Mira and Elion stood at the base of the Starfall Peaks, where wind howled like ancient walls, and the clouds never sat still. Above them, the sky looked torn. Jagged gaps where stars once lived now flickered with emptiness. It was beautiful and broken. The sky unravels, Elion said, shielding his eyes. If the last star fades before the weave is restored, the night will become a cage instead of a cradle. They began the climb. The mountain path twisted sharply, cut by time and wind. With each step, Mira felt the weight of her task. But she also felt something else, the thread glowing warmer in her pouch. It was responding to the mountain, to the nearness of the place where the weave would be made whole again. On the second day of climbing, they came to a stone arch carved into the side of the peak. Etched above it were the words, "Only the true threadbearer may pass." Elion looked to Mira. "This is as far as I may go," he said. "You must take the needle alone." Mira hesitated. "But I don't know how to weave the sky." Elion smiled gently. "You do. The stars taught you every night of your life. Now trust your gift." With a breath drawn deep from her soul, Mira stepped beneath the arch. The stone shimmered. And then she disappeared into the light. Myra stepped through the arch and into a space beyond time. There was no floor, no walls, only stars suspended like raindrops, drifting slowly in an endless night. And in the very center floated the sky loom. It was vast and ancient, its frame carved from moonlight and mountain bone. Each strand stretched across it, shimmering with memory. But many threads were broken, snapped mid-weave, their light flickering out into the void. Mira approached quietly. The silver needle in her hand pulsed with warmth. The glowing thread, now almost too bright to look at, curled gently like a ribbon in her palm. She took a seat before the loom, and she began to weave. First, a soft loop for courage, drawn from her first steps in the forest. Then, a stitch for truth, from the firelit clearing where she met Elion. Then strength, from her battle beneath the black pines. With each pass of the needle, stars returned. Threads reconnected. The holes in the sky slowly began to close. And then, the final thread. It pulsed in her hand, bright, golden, alive. It was hope. She wove it into the center of the tapestry. And with that final stitch, the loom glowed. The chamber filled with a sound like every song ever sung. Soft, bright, infinite. The sky was whole again. Mira looked up, breathless. And for the first time in ages, the stars sang. The wind whispered softly as Mira stepped through the stone arch once more. The night above her was transformed, deep and endless, alive with starlight. The stars no longer flickered in fear. They shone, bold and gentle, singing with every heartbeat of the sky. At the foot of the mountain, Elion waited, his cloak dusted with stardust. When Myra approached, he bowed, not with pomp, but with quiet reverence. "You did it," he said softly. Myra smiled, the silver needle still warm in her hand. "I just listened," she said. The thread knew the way. They walked home beneath the stars, neither speaking much. The silence between them was full of peace. When they returned to Starling Hollow, the villagers gathered beneath the hill. Children pointed at the sky. Old eyes welled with tears. And Myra simply stepped to her loom. From that day forward, she wove not only cloaks and blankets, but skycloth, patterns that shimmered faintly with the light of constellations. Each thread she spun carried warmth, courage, and dreams. And once every month, on the night when the moon was brightest, the villagers gathered under the ancient oak. There, Mira would share stories of Elion, of the sky loom, and of the night the stars were saved. Little by little, others began to weave too, not with glowing thread, but with hearts open to wonder. And so the gift lived on, not just in one girl, but in a village that remembered what it meant to believe. The end, a soft tale of threads, stars, and the quiet magic of listening to your light, perfect for gentle dreams beneath a peaceful sky.